Hello everyone, welcome back to Nid-life Crisis. My name is Niall, and in this video we are going to finally get the paints out to work on the new Warboss in Mega Armour. Before we do that, I'd like to say a big thank you to everyone for supporting the channel so far. It's still early days, but we have over 1,500 views already, which I'm very pleasantly surprised about. Anyway, that's enough for me, let's get to the table. I started by priming the model black and then hit it from above with white ink to make the different details stand out. Moving on to colours, I mixed equal parts of Citadel's Wag Flesh and Ork Flesh for the skin. I find Wag Flesh on its own a little flat and want my Ork skin a little lighter. I applied 2 thin coats for decent coverage over the zenithal highlight. Continuing with the skin, I give the Grot Gunner a coat of Vallejo Game Colour Goblin Green. All of the Gretchen in my army are painted this colour, so it will tie in nicely. Skin done, I move on to the cloth on the front of the Mega Armour. I add Citadel Mephiston Red and Vallejo Dark Sea Blue to the wet palette, and blend together, graduating from one to the other, leaving the range of colours I need to give the cloth depth. Starting with the mid-tone, I coat all of the cloth, giving the backside a slightly darker tone to simulate the extra shadow. Moving on to the deeper folds, I use the darker end of my blend spectrum to give the impression of shadows. Because this is just a darker shade of the same colours in the mid-tone, the colours blend together nicely. Then I highlight the prominent parts of the cloth with the lighter tone in the spectrum. This really accentuates the flowing cloth effect, and I'm really happy with it. This effect could probably be achieved with a shade or wash, but for me, doing it this way looks more natural and you don't get any unwanted streaks left from the wash. Using Citadel Rhinox hide, I move on to the trousers, taking care not to get any onto the cloth I've just painted. Some of the areas at the back are a little bit tricky to get to, but as we are going to be painting the armour afterwards, we don't have to be too neat at this stage. For the armour, I'm using Vallejo Dark Sea Blue. This looks a little bright as the pigment goes on, but it goes a nice blue-black when dry. As I'm going to be painting the combat patrol box as Death Skulls, I thought a dark blue would be a nicer base than black. I hit the shoulder pad with Vallejo Azure. This will be the background to a check pattern that I will add later on in a darker blue. The teeth, including any trophies hanging on the model, as well as the nails, get a couple of coats of Citadel's Andry Dust. Onto the metallics, I use a lead boucher for the weapons. This isn't quite a dry brush, but I make sure not to put too much paint on at one go to clog up any of the details. Then I use Mephiston Red for the skull on the forearm, as well as the big panel on the chopper. There is something satisfying about painting the large flat areas, I'm not quite sure why, but in this hobby the simplest things can please us. The pipes on the back get a coat of bronze metallic for a bit of variation. The eagle-eyed among you will notice that the shoulder panel currently has a check pattern. This was a first attempt, but I wasn't happy, so eventually painted over it. Onto shading now. All of the skin gets a coat of Biotan green, making sure it pulls a little in the recesses, but taking care that the larger areas are clear to avoid any staining. The weapons get a coat of Nuln Oil to give a nice weathered look. The bone and the leather gets hit with Agrax Earthshade. I also go over the armour and the bronze areas with this to give it a dirty weathered look, so he's not fresh out Big Mech's workshop. While the shades are drying, I move on to basing. I'm using one of Luke's base ready products from Geek Gaming Scenics. And if you're going to use his material, then why wouldn't you use his quick drying glue as well? I spread this over the base and then dip the base straight into the aggregate, making sure it comes out evenly covered. When I came back to the model after letting the shade dry, I noticed that I'd gone a bit over the top with the armour and it looked quite messy. So I dry brushed the dark sea blue back onto it to tidy it up. I then repeated the same process with Citadel's Cantor blue, focusing on the sharper edges and the bolts rivets and connection points in the armour panelling. I also used the Cantor blue to hatch the shoulder panel as well, until I got it to the point I was finally happy with it. Some final highlights to the other areas and a bit of chipping with lead voucher using a sponge, and we are ready for the big reveal. Thank you so much for watching. If you could let me know below what you think of the paint job. I don't proclaim to be the best painter in the world, but I will know their mind when I get them on the table, and that's what it's all about. Please like and subscribe to help me on my YouTube journey, and if you know someone that might like this video, why not share it with them. Next week we'll be putting the new boys together and looking at how they compare to the old models. I hope to see you there.